And welcome back to the Dean Obeidallah Show. Now, very excited to welcome back to the show Andy Borowitz, award-winning comedian, New York Times bestselling authors of books including Profiles in Ignorance, which we covered on our show. He's also the creator of the iconic TV show Fresh Prince of Bel Air and the very popular Borowitz Report, which was for about 11 years on New Yorker. Now it's on Substack, which we'll talk about. Andy, it's nice to see you. I've known you for many years. It's great to see you again.
It's great to see you, Dean. I realize we have not done a show together on stage since 2017. That's how long it's been.
Well,
We've just
that's by
been,
your choice because
we
you don't.
no. We've been in our little internet silos, and we think that we, hung out with each other, and we really haven't. So, I don't know if I'll ever see you again in person, but it's enjoyable talking to you.
Well, you live in New Hampshire, right? So if America
Right.
falls apart, I think New Hampshire ends up in the states that I can go to, depending
I
how this
mean,
works.
I don't know. New Hampshire is a strange place because it's kind of a purple state. As you know,
Hmm.
we have two Democratic female senators here. We have Jean Shaheen and Maggie Hassan.
Hmm.
Familiar with them?
Sure.
Um, but the New Hampshire legislature is extremely right wing down in Concord, and but it's like crazy wingnut MAGA right wing. So recently a bill went through the House in Concord, a Republican bill, to legalize brass knuckles in New Hampshire.
Wow.
Yeah, because I
Right
think
in
that
time
was
for
what
election day? Is it right in time for the
it's just
1860s Tammany Hall elections coming up in New
well, I
Hampshire?
mean, it's just I guess what they felt was missing from our lives here. We don't have to pay taxes, but if somebody punches you in the face, you're going to feel it in New Hampshire.
This
So
is,
it's a
how'd
trade-off.
that even get? Is there a brass knuckles lobby that we didn't know about?
That
Is
is
there?
Well, you see, one of the things I want to do with the Borowitz Report is I want to do some local coverage because local newspapers are disappearing. So I think it's up to me to avoid. So I want to go down to Concord and do some digging, do some old-fashioned shoe leather reporting, and find out where's the money in this. Where's the money? And like usually when there's a big bill going through Congress, like it's usually coal, right? Like Joe Manchin's got some
Right.
coal guys. He's making money off of coal. I want to know where the money is in brass knuckles because if you go online, I don't think a pair of brass knuckles is more than maybe like $10. So I don't really see where the deep pockets are.
Are
Is
they
it the brass?
manufactured? Right? Are they? Is there someplace manufactured? Like, is it LL Bean is in
Must
Maine?
be.
So is there an equivalent of brass knuckles outlets and manufacturers in your state of New Hampshire?
There must be. This is why, again, I think that I have to fill the void in terms of reporting because this is one of those undercovered stories we need to know more about, Dean.
I agree. So Andy Borowitz, people, I'm sure people have read online the Borowitz report over the years. The best is when people, and I raised this to you before, thought your stories were like journalism, they're funny, but and you're making always a valid point. You're a satirist, but they would share it like it was a real news article. Go, could you believe what's going on? I'm like, that's Andy Borowitz. You might want to Google Andy. But
I
so,
know. I know. Well,
how have you dealt with that? I mean, I imagine people have come to you, friends have at least flagged this to you that this was going on.
it happens all the time. I mean, I think when it probably made matters worse than when it was at the New Yorker because the New Yorker is known for meticulously fact checking all of their material. So when people weren't really familiar with what I did and they saw, oh, the New Yorker, there was confusion. And one place where it got very was we had a story that tricked the entire Chinese media. And that's a big country, Dean. I don't know how familiar you are with China, but it's a lot, it's like really like hundreds of millions. And by the way, I never set out to fool anybody. I'm just making fun of reality, and our reality is so messed up now that it's very hard to tell the difference. So it's really reality's fault. It's not my fault that I can see. But I did a story that I thought was very obvious, obviously not true, which was about it was based in which was that after Trump was elected president, he went through this phase in 2017 where he was very paranoid that Barack Obama was eavesdropping on him, that
Hmm. I
Obama had
remember.
left bugs behind. Remember that?
Sure, of
And
course.
so my story was all about him ordering Kellyanne Conway and various people in the White House to cover all the phones in tinfoil to prevent the Barack Obama bugs from picking up their transmissions. And it was so stupid. It's like, even for me, I've got to say, it was really dumb. Like, it was just a very silly idea. And it's like, okay, no one is going to buy this. But it was reported in Chinese state media. And when it gets past Chinese state media, because they eliminate so much free media there, that it's like it sort of speaks as one voice. So it became kind of the news for about 24 hours. And I got some more, page views in China, and that's all I got, right?
Did they ask you to go on TV in China, like their CNN, China News Now or something? And,
I was not. I didn't turn it to my long-term advantage, I've got to say. But now that I'm at Substack and I don't have that New Yorker logo, I don't have the guy in the top hat and the monocle to contend with. Unfortunately, there probably will be more confusion because it won't be tethered to some respectable publication like the New Yorker. But on the other hand, there will probably be fewer people who will misconstrue it as a New Yorker story. So it'll be a mixed bag. I'm thrilled. Substack is, as you know, because you're a Substack writer, it's a fantastic place to publish material because you get to communicate directly with your readers, and there's no kind of layer, especially for comedy. It's tricky when there are layers of serious people between you and the audience. It's like, you imagine doing a stand-up show and there's a guy in the front row saying, "I don't think you can say that, Dean."
Right.
That's sort of what it's like when you're working with an editor, even the best editors. So it's sort of nice not having adult supervision. I can be a little bit more unfettered now.
So, you're known as a satirist, and I know there's been challenges with Trump in the past. One of the most recent things is hard to satirize. He's selling Bibles, personally endorsed Bibles. And it seems like it would be on SNL on Saturday, but it's not. He's selling it. And are the commandments changed? Like, thou shalt commit adultery, thou shalt not steal except for elections. Like, I mean, is he changing?
I'm so glad that you brought this up, Dean, because and I want to discuss this with you because you and I represent, of course, we have sort of an interfaith conversation going here right now. Right. So I'm curious to know, Dean, what do you think the chances of Trump bringing out a Quran would be? Because, especially if things get close in Michigan, you've got a big Muslim population there that could go either way. I mean, some unhappiness with Joe Biden. Trump needs Michigan to win. So does Trump try to say, "Hey, Lee Greenwood, can you do a song sort of about how good it is to be an American, but at least I know I'm a Muslim," or something? Like, I'm just wondering if it's very off-brand for Trump to do a Quran, but do you think he could make that work in some way?
Would he? Of course he would. Andy, his son-in-law got $2 billion from Saudi Arabia. He got hundreds of millions of dollars to have the tournaments, the Saudi-backed LVI golf tournaments, LVI, whatever it is, at his country club where he made millions and millions of dollars. If Saudi said to him, "Can you have Lee Greenwood record God Bless Saudi Arabia," KSA is what they call Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, he would do a version, and Greenwood would do it, and Trump would say, "Today the Muslims are our friends. I know in the past they were bad, now they're good. It's changed. There's the good Muslims, the bad Muslims. This is for the good ones. Join me." In a second, this is a guy, Andy, he literally said 2 weeks ago he wants to repeal the ACA, and then 2 weeks later, "This is ridiculous. We have to strengthen the ACA. I'm going to protect Social Security," and goes on CNBC and says he's going to cut entitlements like Social Security. He's on both sides of every issue now. He keeps doing it.
Well, here's a question then. That was actually a dumb question because it was too easy.
Right, okay.
Right, of course he would do. The Trump Quran is probably being published as we speak.
Big.
And will be released very soon. So here's a question. Now, we know that Trump dislikes Mitt Romney. He hates Mitt Romney so much, he made Ronna McDaniel remove the name Romney from her name. Her name used to be Ronna Romney McDaniel, no more. No. Although maybe that's going to come back in now that she's longer at NBC. Maybe she's going to go. She's now at NBC and she's not at Trump, the RNC. So maybe you get Romney back. I don't know. But he hates the Romneys. So my question is, would Trump release his own Book of Mormon? That is a question, because he's going to win Utah anyway because the Democrats don't win Utah. But would he do like the Book of Mammon, for example? And it's like, sort of like it's about Mormonism, but you make a lot of money because it's Trump.
The book of MAGAism. Yeah, look.
Magoism. There you go.
Anything to make money. Donald Trump said he wants to make America pray, and I wrote an article for Substack. He's trying to make MAGA pay. That's all this is. It's pay again. It really is. And his people fall for it. Andy, it's not Trump can say anything. It's the fact that millions follow him, which is concerning because there's guys in the subway who sound like Trump, right? Every day. No one's following them. Trump is his danger is his lure to our fellow Americans who go like, I like that. He says what I'm thinking. I'm like, what is wrong with your brain if he's saying what you're thinking?
Well, I mean, I've got to say, if somehow, God forbid, and when I say God, I'm saying that in an interfaith sense to everybody in the audience, whoever you pray to. But if he were to become president again, I think I would pray. I've never been much of a prayer person, but I think I would start. It reminds me a little bit when I was doing research for my book. I watched the Dan Quayle debate that he had with Lloyd Benson. And the trick question they asked Dan Quayle over and over again, because he couldn't get it right, was they said, if anything happened to the president, George H.W. Bush, what would be the first thing you'd do? And he said, at one point, he said, the first thing I would do is pray. And like the entire American people agreed with it. I mean, that was like, he said something that we were around with Quayle. So, Trump and prayer, I mean, I don't think that Trump has ever prayed, but I think many of us could be compelled to pray if we were put in that position again.
Look, if Trump, most importantly, Andy, if Trump gets back in, good or bad for comedy? That's the question. No, I'm kidding. Like, how bad?
Gosh.
How concerning is it?
I was actually asked, there's this debate, there's this Oxford style debate that goes on, that's squared or something, or it's like some big debate thing that's on public radio. And they asked me actually to debate that issue when Trump was president. Has Trump been good or bad for comedy? And I thought this is the most tasteless thing I could possibly debate, because that is so down on the list of priorities. Like what's more important, like comedy or the existence of NATO? I actually think I'm going to say NATO one. So I don't know. I think what we comedians, and you could vouch for this, great line that Will Rogers, the legendary American political satirist, had, which he said, "There's no trick political satirist when you have the whole government working for you." And so I really don't think it matters who is. When Barack Obama was elected president, it's terrible for comedy because he's so boring and he's so careful and he doesn't make a lot of mistakes. He's very controlled. And what happened with Obama was that just his crazy. I mean, that the party and the whole John Boehner trying to repeal Obamacare 935 times.
Yep.
They gave us a lot of material. So, I mean, Trump, honestly, if Trump is elected president, we have more things to worry about than our jobs. But there's comedy always finds a way. I mean, people believe it. I mean, the Ukrainians have a great sense of humor. It's very dark, but comedy never really departs, even in the worst of times. Sometimes, especially in the worst of times, we need it the most. So that's kind of a serious answer to your question, but I think
I was kind of kidding about, like, I'm not really. Well, I don't care how comedy is going to be because I don't know where I will be if he wins again and how this works out. So I have more concerns.
You may be deported, Dean. It really depends. It really depends on who his sponsors are, whether he's going to be.
I'll be Saudi. I'll be like, but I'm from Saudi.
Yeah, I mean, you may have to like sort of hew to his line a little bit, but I mean, I don't know. I mean, it doesn't seem. I feel like my one saving grace in terms of my not being imprisoned when he's president is that I work strictly, I would say 90% in the written medium. So I just don't think that I really am. I think he hates it when somebody goes on Saturday Night Live and does an imitation of him. It's like it's a very kind of juvenile level. It's like, hey, that guy's dressed in a fat suit and he's got, a wig on. I don't like that. So those are the people that really drive him crazy. I think like, a cerebral piece of satire online, it's just never going to turn up on his radar at all.
I'm chatting with Andy Borowitz, award-winning comedian, satirist, and now the Borowitz Report, which many of you know from the New Yorker, is now on Substack at borowitzreport.com, and it's free. Just sign up for it. We're going to talk about the Borowitz Report. One thing, how do you think President Biden's doing? He's actually having a huge fundraiser here in New York today with Obama and Bill Clinton at Radio City Music Hall. And all joking aside, it's expected to raise the most money ever at one night political event, $25 million, which is great. But also it's sad that money is that important in politics. But how do you think Biden's doing? Are you feeling good? Are you concerned? I know we're 8 months out, but still.
Well, I think we are a long way out. I don't really pay attention to polls at this point. And
Right.
and having lived 2016 barely, I'm not so sure we should pay attention to polls ever. Like, I mean, I was at a quote unquote victory party for Hillary Clinton on election night 2016. And I don't know if you were watching like that needle that the New York Times has, and the needle started going like in the wrong direction. And ever since then, I've kind of just tuned out the polls. And to me, the best case scenario, and I know I'm like the 9,000th person to bring this up, is the general election of 1948, when everybody had counted out Harry Truman, and he was being assailed not just by the Republicans, Thomas Dewey, but by both the right and the left of his party. You had the Dixiecrats in the South hated him, and then you had Henry Wallace on the left hating him. And so everybody was counting him out. Also, he was never elected in the first place. He was, sort of an accidental president. And he just had a tremendous amount of kind of feisty moxie, I guess, Midwestern moxie. And Biden bears more than a passing resemblance to Harry Truman in his whole affect. And he's a fighter. I mean, he keeps on doing that corny story about, his dad telling him to get up, champ, if somebody knocks you down. And it is corny, but you know what? It works. Like when he gets to be like the angry, shouty Joe Biden, like he was at the State of the Union, it really worked. And the other thing people aren't really realizing about him, everybody sort of knocks him for how old he is. That's actually the thing I like the most about him. I love the fact that he's old, because old people just don't care. Like Barack Obama was always so careful. Like you would say to Obama, what are the chances? How's it looking on the debt ceiling negotiations? And he'd say, we're making good progress. We're feeling like the solutions are within reach, and I'm confident to put you to sleep. And Joe Biden would take the same question and just like, shut up, Jack, talking to you. He's just like the angry old guy who's been around. And that's one of the things I like about him. The other thing I will say in all seriousness, we've had 40 years of Joe Biden in public life. He was elected to the Senate in the 80s, I guess, when he was in his 29 or something.
29, yep. Mm-hmm.
And he was a senator for a million years, and then he was Obama's vice president, of the of all the jobs he's done many jobs. The United States is the one he's done. Totally serious. I was never a Joe Biden fan until he became president, because I don't know how he's doing it. I don't know if it's like a coalition between him and great staff or what's going on. But I don't care, because he's getting it done. And I think also Republicans have handed him some own goals. I think, with the Dobbs decision and other than, they've given him real gifts. So I'm actually good. I think it's going to be a very close election. It's going to come down to those same swing states that are annoying because of our whole ridiculous process. It'll come down to those 6 states. But he's clearly the best candidate the Democrats had election cycle, bar none. I can't give a better.
And he's the guy. So whatever it's going to be him.
He's the guy.
At this point, we are 222 days away, because I counted down on my show. So Andy, let's talk about the Borowitz Report. It's no longer in the New Yorker. Now it's for free. You can check it out at borowitzreport.com. It's on Substack. And when you write when you do a satire, one of your columns, and satirize, it's funny. How does it generally work, by the way? We only got a couple minutes left, but how is the process? Is it things just jump in your head? I'm going to write this. Or do you sit there and go I like this topic and I have to address this somehow?
It's a little of both. I mean, I'm aware, something like the Trump Bible, it's too delicious a topic one. So of course you have to get to that. But I mean, in general, I think about jokes like any comedian does it. And for a joke to be funny, it's got to have some element of the truth to it. If it's untethered from the truth, then probably not going to people laugh. It's a weird kind of alchemy that I think every works at. Sometimes it works better than others. I don't sit down and I'm not a news junkie. I'm not like drilled down into the news. It's really like the big news stories are the ones that I focus on because I want a big audience. I want a big tent. I want to be talking about things they're thinking about. So I'm not going for obscurity here. But that's kind of the process. I've been doing it now for, almost 25 years. I'm like Biden. I've just been
Wow. You're going to be yelling at people, get off my lawn. That's what Biden reminds me of, the guy, like, get off my lawn, but he's yelling out policy stuff. Instead of saying, get off my lawn, he's like, strengthen the ACA, strengthen Medicare.
Yeah.
I'm like, wow. And get off my lawn.
He's just got a folding chair and he's sitting in it and he's shouting. Love it.
So is Borowitz Report the best way to get to it, or go to Substack and Google Andy Borowitz, or what's the best way?
If you can type the words BorowitzReport.com, you'll get right there. That's the URL. When I signed on with the New Yorker 11 years ago, I kept that URL because I knew that someday this day would come. Nothing is forever in this business. 11 years is a long time. That's as long as Margaret Thatcher was prime minister and as long as Happy Days was on ABC.
Wow.
That's longevity in show business or in British politics. That's a long time. So, but I knew this day would come, and I'm so psyched to have my destiny in my own hands because I'm having of my life.
I can't recommend it enough. I've literally recommended it on Substack, and Andy was kind enough to recommend my Substack. And it's very funny. It makes you laugh out loud, and it makes you think. And I think it's really great. Andy, it was great connecting with you again. Let's do this again before the election, like in the fall. Totally. We'll talk about dispatches from New Hampshire and Concord, maybe the brass knuckles affair. You can break that open. Whatever's going on there, whatever else that steel tip shoes, whatever else they've passed by then, we can go into it there. Thanks, my friend. Have a great day.
Thanks, Dean, so much.